Welcome in, ladies and gents. This is the My Adventures with Superman little TV series reaction. So yeah, it's been probably about 8 to 10 months since the previous season wrapped up, and I'm just not catching up with it. But nevertheless, I'm not used to Jack Quaid being in this titular character role as Superman because I don't believe he's actually portraying Superman as I expect him to be. And it's not about my expectations, but he's basically being Jack Quaid, or at least he's voicing himself as Jack Quaid as opposed to him taking on and embracing a Superman persona. At least is what I'm accustomed to. And we know from the Superman, the animated series with Tim Daly, he pretty much, I mean, everybody has a distinct voice, so they can't really help what type of voice they have, but I don't know. I just when Tim Daly's voice as Superman, it has more gravitas to it. It has more bravado. It feels more masculine as Superman. And so, no disrespect to Jack Quaid, I think as voicing this character overall as Superman in this iteration of him, he does a good job as that. And obviously from the previous Superman, the animated series, you had Dana Delaney, who was also in Tulsa King. She was playing Lois in there. And this, My Adventures with Superman, Lois Lane is Alex Lee. So some underground actress who hasn't really taken off yet. But she does a good job here as well. And I don't know who the actor is that's supposed to be portraying Jimmy Olsen, but he's fine in here. The character itself is actually pretty cool. And I like how they decided to take him. And so, yes, we're 2 minutes into this thing, so it is going to be spoilers, as you may know or may not. But yes, I'm spoiling the first two seasons as much as I can, but also leaving a little bit for you to discover for yourself. But anyway, so what they do with the Superman mythos here, they kind of shifted and they subverted from what we accustomed to seeing, at least what I'm accustomed to seeing it as. And maybe obviously based on whatever comic book run that you're reading, it may be a different iteration. But the core essential is he's the last son of Krypton. He's shipped over by his parents to Earth because obviously his planet dies. And yeah, he's sent here to be a beacon of hope and potentially be a savior of these people, or guardian over these people who this planet and this universe that he's in that can help him. He can thrive in this place, and it's up to him to decide what type of person he's going to be. But obviously, his parents' hopes were for him to be somebody of preeminence, and so he is, because he's Superman. But in here, they do something very interesting, which I like, where instead of him just being sent here by his parents just to get away from the destruction of his planet, it's more of we surveyed this place as a place of setting up a colony of for our people to thrive and to have rulership, or at least that's how it's portrayed in the first season, at least. And yeah, Superman, obviously him growing up on the farm and adopting all Earth's customs, he rejects the notion of taking over the planet because he's just your average your average farm boy, and becomes a man, and he wants to travel off obviously to Metropolis and become a reporter and all those things. He just wants to be your average human being. He doesn't want to be this extraordinary person that he is, essentially. And yeah, they do a good job with just showcasing obviously the various abilities. I do like how they go through each episode as a progression of his abilities as opposed to just coming out and he's essentially has all his abilities and powers. So I appreciate that they did that, and they show you like as certain emotional, very traumatic or very blunt force type of emotional moments happen, that it activates a certain part of his brain that allows that new ability to come to the surface. And so they do a good job of that, and they don't do the typical, Lex Luthor as the just main antagonist. They actually go with Amanda Waller, which I find to be very interesting because she's more, in my opinion, she's more of a Batman villain But they bring her in there, and I believe obviously I think Lois Lane's father is also kind of associated with Amanda Waller, and it's kind of good. It's kind of interesting to put those two characters together because they actually make sense to be in tandem with each other as opposed to not being separate from each other, because they both have a certain disdain for Superman, and we see in the first season how they doing whatever they can to, just because Superman represents that ultimate force of power, they want to make sure either they get him in check or they get rid of him, and so they send as much and whoever they can at him in order to test his limits, but also see how they can gain an advantage over him. And so they do it the first season. They do a really good job of that, and we just see the relationship that Superman has, or at least what Clark has with Lois and with Jimmy, and how they become this like triangle group where they're all best friends. Well, it started with Jimmy and Clark being best friends, and they roommates essentially, and then you get Lois. She kind of gets brought in to the group because obviously they're working together in the first season as interns for the Daily Planet, and we just see their relationship dynamics develop between each one of those three, and we obviously see the obvious and eventual Lois and Clark getting together, and we see how that relationship starts to unfold, and how they go about the identity. They do it very, very, very. I appreciate this. They do it in a very cohesive and just simply plain and cognizant way of, yes, it's not too much to put together that this man that is Clark, he of a certain stature, he of a certain height, and every time Superman shows up, Clark is nowhere to be found. So Lois Lane was able to deduce that by the end of the season, and Jimmy, he always knew, because obviously, how can you try to conceal your identity from somebody that is literally roommates with you? That's one addition where it's like they still kind of have this Superman, or at least this iteration of Clark Kent, that's most likely between 18 to 24. So he still hasn't really like got out on his own as a man and create his own place. I wish they would do that. Maybe they'll do it they'll do it in season 3. And so obviously the end of season 1, Lois Lane, Dad, and Amanda Waller is doing whatever they can to take out Superman, but because Superman's Kryptonian heritage, and his group is still out there, they kind of invade Earth again and try to take it over, or at least try to put their influence and their power, exert their power on Earth. And obviously Superman has to team up with Amanda Waller and Lois Lane's father, or with Sam, in order to stop Superman's Kryptonians, or at least part of his Kryptonian, I guess you could say, army or militia from attacking Earth. And yeah, and then we find out in season 2, it's actually not his Kryptonian military. It's more so Brainiac. Essentially, Brainiac is the one who's causing all this chaos, which makes sense because obviously in his most iterations, Brainiac is essentially from Krypton, but obviously he's utilized all that AI brain power and intelligence that he has and created his own little army with the addition of Supergirl. He captured Supergirl and put her under his leadership, because in the second season, they essentially, it's like it making it seem as if Supergirl's actual father was alive, but Brainiac has seduced her into believing that he is her father. He has obviously utilized some technology upon her brain and to confuse her and things like that. And she comes to Earth as a emissary, if you will, looking for Clark, and she ends up getting a romantic love with Jimmy and some of the other characters, like I believe Livewire and some of the other characters in the Superman mythos that they bring in. I think I always forget the little dude that's like I always forget his name. It starts with an M. You guys know who I'm talking about. The little one that's like has these interdimensional powers and stuff. Like he's super powerful, but he's always being like a jokester to Superman and always toying with him. But they introduce him, I believe, in the first season. They also have like multi-dimensional Lois Lanes that come around. It's a bunch of chaos a lot of times in this show. But I did like the introduction of Supergirl in season 2 and how they brought her story into the fold, and how that relates to Superman, and all the things that inevitably ensues over season 2. And so, with obviously, I believe Sam Lane, because at the end of season 1, Sam Lane is now roommates with Clark and Jimmy, and that whole dynamic is pretty funny. Him still like, I know Clark from somewhere. Like, even though he's been going back and forth with Superman for a long time, he knows that Lois reports with and for Superman at times, and obviously Clark is always around with Lois, and he's still not being able to put the two together is just goofy to me, but it is what it is. And yeah, season 2, they do a good job, really good job with how they just bring everything and all the various characters into its conclusion. And I'm really looking forward to see what they do with season 3. Like I said, it can be off-putting if you're not used to Superman being in this way, especially with that voice. The Jack Quaid voice of Superman is probably one of the worst voices of Superman. He sounds too much like he's 16, 17 years old. And I know Jack Quaid is probably like 33, 34 years old, but he still sounds like a teenage boy. And so it's interesting choice that they made. I wouldn't have made that choice personally, but it is what it is. But I definitely think you guys should check it out. I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Peace.